The arrival. The day the Zarkian Empire arrived was like any other on Earth. People went about their daily lives, unaware that humanity's greatest challenge loomed just beyond the atmosphere. It began with a flicker, satellite communications faltering, GPS systems glitching. Then came the darkness. Massive ships, each the size of a small country, blotted out the sun as they positioned themselves over major cities worldwide. Panic erupted in the streets as the realization of an alien presence sank in. Governments scrambled, militaries mobilized, but against the sheer scale of the Zarkian fleet, Earth's defenses seemed pitiful. A booming voice, translated simultaneously into every language, thundered from the sky. People of Earth, hear us. We are the Zarkian Empire, conquerors of 1,000 worlds. Your planet is now under our dominion. Resist, and face annihilation. Submit, and you may yet survive as our subjects. You have one planetary rotation to decide. In the halls of power across the globe, leaders debated furiously. Some advocated immediate surrender, hoping to save lives. Others called for defiance, unwilling to bow to alien demands. As the hours ticked by, a grim consensus emerged. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. The United Nations convened an emergency session, broadcast to every corner of the Earth. The Secretary General, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment, delivered humanity's response. To the Zarkian Empire, we, the people of Earth, have heard your ultimatum. We have faced our own demons, our own wars, our own struggles for millennia. Each time, we have emerged stronger, more united. We will not surrender our home, our freedom, or our dignity. If you seek battle, you will find no easy conquest here. Earth stands ready. As the deadline approached, the world held its breath. Military forces were mobilized, civilians were evacuated from major cities, and improvised shelters were hastily constructed. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock, attempting to analyze the alien technology for any weakness. In orbit, the Zarkian fleet received Earth's defiant message. The Zarkian Supreme Commander, a towering figure with iridescent scales and cold, calculating eyes, allowed himself a small smile. In all their conquests, they had never encountered a species foolish enough to resist openly. This would be a short campaign, he thought, a mere footnote in the glorious history of the Empire. As the deadline passed, the Zarkian ships hummed with energy. Weapons of unimaginable power were primed, ready to unleash devastation on the defiant planet below. The Supreme Commander gave a simple order. Commence the attack. Show these primitives the cost of defiance. Beams of searing energy lanced from the ships, targeting military installations, power plants, and communication hubs. The night sky lit up with explosions, the ground shook with impacts, and humanity got its first taste of the awesome destructive capability of the Zarkian Empire. But even as cities burned and defenses crumbled, something unexpected happened. Instead of cowering in fear, humans rallied. Emergency services rushed into danger zones, saving lives against impossible odds. Civilians formed impromptu rescue teams, digging through rubble with their bare hands to save strangers. In the face of overwhelming force, humanity's spirit refused to break. Reports flooded in from around the globe, of soldiers standing their ground against energy weapons with conventional arms, of hackers working tirelessly to breach alien firewalls, of scientists pooling knowledge across borders to understand the invaders' technology. The Zarkian Supreme Commander watched the unfolding resistance with growing unease. This was not proceeding as planned. These humans, with their primitive technology and fragile bodies, were supposed to have crumbled by now. Instead, they fought back with a ferocity that bordered on the insane. As the first day of the invasion drew to a close, both sides prepared for what was to come. The Zarkians, confident in their superior technology and numbers, planned for a swift campaign of subjugation. Humanity, battered but unbroken, steeled itself for the fight of its existence. Little did either side know, the true test was yet to come. For in labs and bunkers, in hidden bases and makeshift command centers, humans were already adapting, innovating, preparing surprises that would shock even the mightiest galactic empire. The invasion had begun, but so too had humanity's finest hour. The Zarkians had unleashed their might upon the earth, but they were about to learn a harsh lesson. Never underestimate the human spirit when its back is against the wall. As night fell on a changed world, the stars above seemed to dim, obscured by the looming shapes of the invader ships. But in the darkness, hope flickered, not the blind hope of the desperate, but the determined hope of a species that had faced extinction before and lived to tell the tale. The battle for Earth had only just begun. The first wave. Dawn broke over a world forever changed. The Zarkian invasion entered its second day, and with it came a new level of brutality. Massive dropships descended from the motherships, disgorging legions of Zarkian ground troops. These weren't mere soldiers, but bioengineered killing machines, each standing 3 meters tall, with armor that seemed to absorb energy weapons and regenerate from physical damage. As the alien troops marched through cities and across countrysides, Earth's conventional military forces engaged them head-on. The bravery of human soldiers was beyond question, but against the technologically superior invaders, it often proved futile. Tanks were tossed aside like toys, fighter jets swatted from the sky, and entire battalions vaporized by handheld Zarkian weapons. In Washington, D.C., General Sarah Chen watched the global situation map with growing despair. Red dots indicating Zarkian control spread like a virus across every continent. "We can't beat them conventionally," she muttered, her fists clenched at her sides. "We need to change the game." Across the globe, similar realizations were dawning. In the bunkers of Moscow, the war rooms of Beijing, the hidden command centers of Tel Aviv, military strategists came to the same conclusion. Conventional warfare was a death sentence. Humanity needed to adapt, and fast. The first glimmer of hope came from an unexpected source. In the ruins of Mumbai, a group of street kids led by a 14-year-old girl named Priya stumbled upon a downed Zarkian scout ship. While adult engineers argued over how to approach the alien tech, Priya and her friends simply climbed in. Their familiarity with jury-rigging electronics to survive on the streets proved unexpectedly valuable. Within hours, they had partially activated the ship's systems. "It's like a really fancy video game," Priya explained to the astonished military personnel who arrived on the scene. Her insights, translated into technical jargon, were quickly disseminated to research teams worldwide. It wasn't a breakthrough, but it was a start. The first crack in the Zarkian technological armor. Meanwhile, in the Amazon rainforest, the Zarkian advance met unexpected resistance. Indigenous tribes, armed with little more than blowguns and an intimate knowledge of the terrain, managed to down several Zarkian troops. Their poison darts, derived from native plants, somehow penetrated the alien armor. Samples of the poison were rushed to labs around the world, offering another potential weakness to exploit. As these small victories accumulated, a new strategy began to emerge. General Chen, conferring with her counterparts globally, initiated what would become known as the Mosquito Protocol. Instead of facing the Zarkians in open battle, human forces would strike fast, strike hard, and disappear. A global guerrilla war. Special forces teams were reorganized into small, highly mobile units. They struck at Zarkian supply lines, ambushed patrols, and disappeared into the landscape before retaliation could arrive. Urban resistance groups turned cities into deadly mazes for the invaders, using improvised traps and intimate knowledge of every alley and sewer. The Zarkian Supreme Commander, Howard, watched these developments with growing frustration. What should have been a routine conquest was turning into a protracted conflict. "Increase the pressure," he ordered. "Raise their cities if you must. These primitives must learn the price of defiance." In response, the Zarkians escalated their attacks. Entire cities were threatened with orbital bombardment unless they surrendered. Some did, out of desperate hope to save lives. Others, like New York, responded with a defiant message: "Give us liberty, or give us death." The Zarkians obliged, turning the iconic skyline of Manhattan into a hellscape of fire and ash. But even as buildings crumbled, the human spirit remained unbroken. From the rubble, survivors emerged, not to flee, but to fight. Construction workers became urban warriors, using their knowledge of half-collapsed buildings to set deadly traps. Wall Street quants turned their mathematical genius to predicting Zarkian patrol patterns, allowing resistance fighters to strike with uncanny precision. In the skies, a new kind of dogfight emerged. Earth's air forces, outmatched in direct combat, instead focused on luring Zarkian fighters into carefully prepared kill zones. In the canyons of the American Southwest, the fjords of Norway, the mountain passes of the Himalayas, human pilots used their superior maneuverability and knowledge of the terrain to even the odds. But for every victory, there was a cost. Cities lay in ruins, farmlands were scorched, and the global death toll mounted. Refugee camps swelled with displaced millions, straining the resources of every nation. Yet even in these desperate circumstances, humanity's capacity for compassion shone through. International aid organizations worked tirelessly, crossing former enemy lines to distribute supplies and medical care. In orbit, the first human counterattacks were launched. Hastily retrofitted satellites, loaded with nuclear warheads, were detonated near Zarkian ships. The explosions were barely pinpricks against the massive alien vessels, but they proved that humanity could reach beyond its atmosphere to strike back. As the first week of the invasion drew to a close, both sides reassessed their positions. The Zarkians, for all their technological superiority, found themselves in an uncomfortable situation. They controlled much of Earth's surface, but their hold was tenuous. Every victory seemed Pyrrhic, every conquered territory a potential death trap. Humanity, though battered and bloodied, had found its footing. The initial shock had worn off, replaced by a grim determination. In labs and workshops, in forest hideouts and underground bunkers, plans were being made. The Mosquito Protocol was just the beginning. General Chen, reviewing the latest reports, allowed herself a small smile. "We're still in this fight," she told her staff. "And we're learning. God help the Zarkians when we figure out how to bite back for real." Little did she know, the next phase of the war was about to begin, one that would shake the Zarkian Empire to its core and reveal the true potential of humanity unleashed. The Silent Rebellion. As the war entered its second month, a new chapter in humanity's resistance began to unfold. Deep in the Scottish Highlands, in a repurposed whiskey distillery, an elite group of soldiers from various special forces units around the world gathered in secret. They called themselves the Ghosts, and they were about to change the course of the war. Major Aisha Khoury, formerly of the French Foreign Legion, addressed the assembled group. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here because we're the best at what we do. Snipers, infiltrators, saboteurs. The Zarkians think they've broken our conventional forces. They have no idea what's coming." The plan was audacious. Using cutting-edge stealth technology reverse-engineered from downed Zarkian scouts, combined with traditional camouflage techniques, the Ghosts would infiltrate enemy-held territory. Their targets: Zarkian command and control centers. The first strike came without warning. In occupied Berlin, a Zarkian general suddenly collapsed, a pinprick wound in his neck the only sign of foul play. Before his guards could react, 3 more officers fell. Panic spread through the Zarkian ranks as they realized they were under attack. But from where? Miles away, Ghost sniper surgeon Wei Lin allowed herself a grim smile as she packed up her custom-made rifle. The weapon, a marvel of human engineering, fired projectiles smaller than a grain of sand at hypersonic speeds, silent, nearly invisible, and devastating. Similar scenes played out across the globe. In Rio de Janeiro, Sydney, Cairo, and dozens of other occupied cities, Key Zarkian leaders fell to unseen assailants. The ghosts struck like their namesakes, invisible, untraceable, gone before the enemy could respond. The effect on Zarkian operations was immediate and severe. Paranoia set in among their ranks. Commands became confused. Operations were delayed or canceled as officers feared for their lives. The once unstoppable alien war machine began to sputter. Supreme Commander Xarlath was furious. How? He raged at his subordinates. How are these primitives doing this? Find them. Crush them. But finding the ghosts proved nearly impossible. They left no trace, no heat signature, nothing for the advanced Zarkian sensors to detect. And they had help from an unexpected quarter. In the vast server farms of Silicon Valley, a different kind of battle was being waged. A coalition of the world's top hackers, led by a mysterious figure known only as SCiFi, had been working tirelessly to crack Zarkian communication codes. Now, they were in. SCiFi's voice, distorted and anonymous, briefed military leaders worldwide. We can't control their systems, but we can listen in. We can feed false information. We can misdirect. This digital insurgency proved to be the perfect complement to the ghosts' physical attacks. Zarkian forces would be fed false intelligence, leading them into ambushes. Critical supply lines would be rerouted, leaving frontline troops undersupplied and vulnerable. As effective as these tactics were, they came with a heavy price. Ghost teams sometimes didn't return from missions. Hackers were discovered and targeted for orbital strikes. But for every fallen hero, dozens stepped up to take their place. The tide of the war was shifting, but the Zarkians were far from defeated. In response to these guerrilla tactics, they escalated their brutality. Entire cities were held hostage, threatened with annihilation if the attacks didn't stop. Humanity faced an impossible choice: submit or watch millions die. The debate raged in the remaining free governments. Some argued for capitulation to save lives. Others insisted that giving in would doom the entire species to eternal servitude. In the end, it was not governments that decided, but individuals. Civilians in threatened cities began to evacuate en masse, not away from the danger, but towards it. Millions marched on Zarkian positions, armed with nothing but their courage and numbers. The images shocked the world. Waves of humanity advancing on alien war machines, absorbing horrific casualties, but never stopping. If you want to destroy our cities, their message read, you'll have to destroy us all. Faced with this unexpected development, many Zarkian ground commanders hesitated. Their species had conquered worlds, but they had never encountered this level of collective self-sacrifice. For the first time, doubt began to creep into the Zarkian war effort. Taking advantage of this hesitation, ghost teams struck at the heart of Zarkian command. In a daring raid on a major command ship hovering over London, a team led by Major Corey infiltrated the vessel. The intelligence they gathered was priceless, but the cost was high. Of the 12 ghosts who embarked on the mission, only Curry and 2 others returned. As she was debriefed, battered and grieving for her lost comrades, Corey managed a defiant grin. "We've got them scared now," she reported. "They never expected this. They don't know how to fight an enemy that won't quit, no matter the odds." The intelligence from the raid was quickly disseminated. Zarkian weapon schematics, shield frequencies, tactical doctrines, a treasure trove of data that could turn the tide of the war. Scientists and engineers worldwide began working around the clock to develop countermeasures. As the 3rd month of the war dawned, humanity had done the impossible. They had checked the advance of an interstellar empire, but holding them back wasn't enough. It was time to push them off Earth for good. In hidden bases and secret labs, preparations were being made for a counteroffensive unlike anything in human history. The silent rebellion had blooded the invaders. Now, it was time for humanity to roar. The turning point. 6 months into the Zarkian invasion, Earth was a changed planet. Sprawling megalopolises had been reduced to rubble, lush forests scorched to ash. Yet from the ashes, hope emerged. not as a fragile, flickering flame, but as a blazing inferno of human defiance and ingenuity. In a vast underground complex beneath the ruins of Geneva, Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood before a collection of the world's greatest scientific minds. Her eyes, though weary from endless nights of work, sparkled with excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "I believe we've cracked it." On the holographic display behind her, a complex schematic rotated slowly. It was the culmination of months of reverse engineering Zarkian technology, combined with bleeding-edge human innovation. "We're calling it the Nexus Protocol," Dr. Tanaka explained. "A quantum-entangled, AI-driven defense network that can predict and counter Zarkian attacks in real time." The implications were staggering. If successful, the Nexus Protocol would effectively neutralize the Zarkians' technological advantage. But implementing it on a global scale seemed like an impossible task. Enter SCiFi and their army of hackers. "We can't build a physical infrastructure fast enough," the distorted voice explained in a global broadcast. "But we don't need to. We're going to use the Zarkians' own communication network against them." It was an audacious plan. While the Ghosts and other resistance fighters launched a series of diversionary attacks worldwide, SCiFi's hackers would insert the Nexus Protocol directly into the Zarkian battlenet. The aliens' own systems would become the conduit for humanity's counterattack. The operation was designated Prometheus Unbound. Across the globe, resistance cells prepared for their roles. In the orbiting Zarkian fleet, oblivious to the coming storm, Supreme Commander Xarlath was planning the final push to crush human resistance once and for all. The day of reckoning arrived with the subtlety of a thunderclap. As Zarkian forces prepared to launch a massive, coordinated attack on the last free human strongholds, SCiFi struck. The Nexus Protocol, disguised as a routine system update, infiltrated the alien network. For a brief moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, chaos erupted. Zarkian ships began firing on each other, their targeting systems hijacked. Ground forces found their communications jammed, their advanced weapons suddenly inert. Orbital platforms designed to rain death on cities below instead turned their considerable firepower on the Zarkian fleet. In the skies above New Delhi, Wing Commander Raj Patel led a squadron of retrofitted fighter jets into battle. Armed with weapons hastily adapted from Zarkian technology, they tore through the alien fighters with surprising ease. "Sierra Flight, this is Sierra Lead." Patel's voice crackled over the comm. "Confirm what I'm seeing. Are their shields down?" "Confirmed, Sierra Lead," came the reply, tinged with disbelief and growing excitement. "Their shields are offline. Nexus is working." Similar scenes played out across the globe. In the seas, submarines armed with reverse-engineered energy torpedoes struck at the underbellies of Zarkian carriers. On land, tanks that had been hiding in underground bunkers emerged, their cannons now capable of punching through alien armor. But it was in space where the true turning point occurred. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, monitoring the situation from a hidden base in the Andes, watched in awe as humanity took its first steps into orbital combat. A hastily assembled fleet of ships, cobbled together from pre-invasion satellites and captured Zarkian technology, engaged the alien armada. These ships, crewed by a mixture of trained astronauts and veteran pilots, lacked the raw power of their Zarkian counterparts. But with the Nexus Protocol guiding their every move, predicting enemy actions, and coordinating the human fleet with inhuman precision, they fought with devastating effectiveness. Supreme Commander Xarlath, watching his invasion force crumble around him, could scarcely believe what was happening. "Impossible," he muttered, his multifaceted eyes wide with shock. "They were primitives. How could they?" His disbelief turned to horror as alarms blared throughout his command ship. A voice he had never heard before, speaking perfect Zarkian, echoed through the vessel's speakers. "This is Major Aisha Khoury of the Human Defense Force," the voice declared. "Your ship has been boarded. Your fleet is in disarray. Surrender now, or face the consequences of your invasion." Across Earth, humanity pressed its advantage. Ghost teams, their positions now coordinated by the Nexus Protocol, struck at Zarkian command centers with unprecedented precision. Resistance fighters emerged from hiding, armed with weapons that could finally match the invaders. In orbit, the battle raged on. Human ingenuity, bolstered by adapted alien tech and guided by the Nexus Protocol, proved a match for Zarkian military might. Ships fell from the sky, some disintegrating in the atmosphere, others crashing into the oceans or uninhabited areas. As the day wore on, the impossible became reality. The Zarkian invasion force, once thought invincible, was on the run. Supreme Commander Xarlath, his ship crippled and boarding parties closing in, faced a decision that would shape the future of two species. In cities around the world, humans emerged from shelters to see Zarkian ships retreating, human fighters in hot pursuit. Cheers erupted, a wave of jubilation spreading across the planet. But in command centers and makeshift war rooms, leaders knew the truth. This was not the end, but a turning point. The Zarkians had been bloodied, their aura of invincibility shattered. But they were far from defeated. As reports flooded in from around the globe and beyond, one thing became clear. The war for Earth was entering its final, most dangerous phase. Humanity had proven it could fight back, could even win battles against the galactic invaders. Now came the true test. Could they win the war? As the dust settled on this day of victories, preparations were already underway for the final push. In labs, factories, and military bases, humans worked tirelessly to capitalize on their newfound advantages. The Nexus Protocol had changed the game, but the Zarkians would adapt. The race was on to stay one step ahead. Dr. Tanaka, reviewing the data from the day's battles, allowed herself a moment of pride before refocusing on the challenges ahead. "We've surprised them once," she told her team. "We need to make sure we can do it again, and again, until they're gone for good." The tide had turned. The hunted had become the hunters. As humanity steeled itself for the battles to come, one thing was certain. The Zarkians had made a grave mistake in underestimating this primitive species. It was a mistake they would not live to repeat. The reckoning. The war had raged for nearly a year. Earth, once a blue jewel in the cosmos, now bore the scars of an interstellar conflict. But amidst the devastation, a new strength had emerged. Humanity, united as never before, stood on the precipice of an impossible victory. In the remnants of Shanghai, now a sprawling command center for the Human Defense Force, General Chen pored over holographic battle maps. "They're regrouping," she observed, noting the movements of the remaining Zarkian fleet, preparing for one last, desperate push. Indeed, Supreme Commander Xarlath, having narrowly escaped capture during the turning point, had rallied his remaining forces. From his new command ship, hidden in the dark side of the moon, he addressed his troops. "We are the Zarkian Empire," his voice boomed, tinged with desperation. "We do not know defeat. We will crush these humans, no matter the cost." But the Zarkians were no longer fighting the same enemy they had invaded a year ago. Humanity had evolved, adapted, and grown stronger through adversity. The Nexus Protocol, continuously refined by Dr. Tanaka and her global team of scientists, had expanded beyond mere defense. It now served as the nervous system of Earth's war effort, coordinating every aspect of the resistance. SCiFi, their identity still a mystery, had become a symbol of human ingenuity. Their network of hackers worked tirelessly, not just countering Zarkian cyber attacks, but actively dismantling the invaders' command and control systems. They thought they could enslave us with their technology, SCiFi's distorted voice declared in a rare public broadcast. Instead, we've made it our own. The Ghosts, once a small elite unit, had grown into a formidable force. Major Curry, now Colonel, led a multinational special operations command. Their missions had expanded from assassination and sabotage to full-scale assaults on Zarkian strongholds. "We're no longer the hunted," Corey told her troops before a critical mission. "We're the hunters now." As dawn broke on what would become the final day of the war, humanity was ready. The Nexus Protocol had predicted the Zarkians' desperate gambit, a massive, all-out assault aimed at breaking Earth's defenses once and for all. But this time, Earth would not be caught unprepared. Space, once the domain of Zarkian superiority, had become a battleground where human ingenuity shone. A fleet of ships, a mix of retrofitted pre-war satellites and reverse-engineered Zarkian vessels, stood ready to meet the alien armada. At their helm was Admiral Yuki Tanaka, the brilliant scientist who had now become a military leader out of necessity. All ships, battle stations, Tanaka's calm voice echoed across the comm channels. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Today we end this war. The battle erupted with a fury that could be seen from the planet's surface. Energy beams crisscrossed the void, missiles left trails of fire in their wake, and explosions bloomed like deadly flowers in the black of space. On the ground, Zarkian dropships attempted to land fresh troops, only to be met with a prepared and coordinated defense. In the ruins of Paris, a young resistance fighter named Matthew led his squad in repelling an alien assault. Armed with weapons that melded human creativity with Zarkian tech, they fought with a ferocity that surprised even themselves. For Earth, Matthew cried as he fired, his voice echoed by millions around the globe. The battle cry of a species that refused to be conquered. In orbit, Admiral Tanaka's fleet engaged in a dance of death with the Zarkian armada. The Nexus Protocol predicted enemy movements with uncanny accuracy, allowing human ships to be in the right place at the right time, their weapons finding weak points in alien defenses. But the true turning point came from an unexpected source. Deep in the Brazilian rainforest, in a hidden lab built into the side of a mountain, Dr. Elena Rodriguez made a breakthrough. "It's done," she announced to her team, her voice trembling with excitement. "The gravity pulse is ready." The gravity pulse was humanity's secret weapon, the culmination of everything they had learned about Zarkian technology. A device capable of generating a localized field of intense gravitational force, it had the potential to turn the tide of the battle decisively. As the orbital battle reached its zenith, with losses mounting on both sides, the order was given. Dozens of gravity pulse devices, secretly deployed around the planet, were activated simultaneously. The effect was immediate and devastating. Zarkian ships, caught in the intense gravitational fields, found themselves unable to maneuver. Some were crushed outright, while others were pulled into decaying orbits, doomed to burn up in Earth's atmosphere. Supreme Commander Xarlath, watching his fleet disintegrate around him, finally understood the magnitude of his error. These humans, whom he had dismissed as primitive, had not only matched Zarkian technology, but had surpassed it in ways he could barely comprehend. As his ship shuddered under the assault of the gravity pulse, Xarlath made his final decision. "All forces," he commanded, his voice heavy with defeat, "initiate emergency temporal jump. Retreat to Rally Point Omega." Across the battlefield, the remaining Zarkian ships began to disappear in flashes of blinding light. It was their final gambit, a desperate jump through time and space to escape total annihilation. As the last Zarkian ship vanished, an eerie silence fell over the Earth. Then, slowly, realization dawned. Cheers erupted from every corner of the globe, from the depths of bunkers to the heights of skyscrapers. Humanity had done the impossible. They had repelled an invasion by a vastly superior alien force. In the days that followed, the full magnitude of what had been achieved began to sink in. Earth had not just survived. It had emerged stronger, more united, and in possession of technology that would propel human civilization to the stars. Dr. Tanaka, addressing a gathering of world leaders, summed up the sentiment felt by many. "We faced extinction and instead found transcendence. The Zarkians came to conquer us, but in doing so, they unknowingly lifted us to their level. Now, as we look to the future, we do so not as the conquered, but as equals among the stars. The war was over, but humanity's journey was just beginning. With the knowledge and technology gained from their ordeal, Earth began to rebuild. Cities rose from the ashes, greener and more advanced than before. The Nexus Protocol, once a weapon of war, was repurposed to coordinate global efforts in science, medicine, and exploration. As for the Zarkians, their fate remained unknown. Had they truly fled, or were they regrouping for another attack? The question lingered in the minds of Earth's leaders. Colonel Curry, speaking at a memorial for the fallen, addressed this uncertainty. If they return, they'll find a different Earth waiting for them. Not a victim, not a target, but a force to be reckoned with. We'll be ready. And so, as humanity took its first tentative steps into a larger universe, it did so with a newfound confidence. They had faced the ultimate test and emerged victorious. The stars, once a distant dream, now beckoned with the promise of new frontiers, new challenges, and perhaps, one day, reconciliation with their former enemies. For in defeating the Zarkians, humanity had not just saved itself. It had proven that intelligence, adaptability, and an indomitable spirit could overcome any obstacle. It was a lesson that would serve them well in the vast, unknown expanses of the cosmos that now awaited their exploration. The Earth, battle-scared but unbroken, continued its eternal dance around the sun. But now, it was no longer just a pale blue dot in the cosmic ocean. It was the homeworld of a species that had looked into the abyss of extinction and emerged stronger for it. A species ready to take its place among the stars. The end of the war marked not just victory, but a new beginning. Humanity's greatest challenge had become its greatest opportunity. The future, vast and full of possibility, awaited.